Joining us now from Midland, Ontario, Canada, is Al Smith, founder and director of the Archbishop Fulton J. Mission Society of Canada and spokesperson for a new book written by Archbishop Fulton Sheen, A Declaration of Dependence. Welcome back. Glad to have you back on our program. So I just called this a new book. Obviously, it's a book that was written by Fulton J. Sheen during the Second World War, but you're releasing it now. Why?
Well, I think people say, time and time again, Fulton Sheen is a prophet. And I think what Fulton Sheen is he's a fan of history. He understands what has happened with the world. He actually lived through 2 world wars, so he can speak about it. And, this book that he penned in 1941, the year that America entered the Second World War, was just a refreshing conversation with America to kind of say to everyone, do we depend on God or not? Of course, the title of the book, The Declaration of Dependence, speaks volumes. Are we depending on God? Because, of course, America was very much afraid. They were entering a Second World War. It seemed only a few years after the First World War. And that First World War was supposed to be the lesson that we learned, that we would never have another great war, but we fell into that second war. And so he asked those questions, where is God? And so again, I think it's a timely re-release for people to have this conversation once again with this very wise and holy man, the Venerable Archbishop Sheen.
Yeah, I love the title because we think of ourselves as an independent nation. That notion of independence runs through what it means to be an American, yet we forget this fact that we are dependent upon God. It's something to talk about all the time at baptism, relating to the fact that children are dependent upon their parents. So in a sense, do you think that that's a key to us dealing with the difficulties that we're facing at this time, that we're trying to be too independent, too divided, rather than dependent upon God?
Yeah, I think it goes to that conversation of church and state, the separation of the two, and yet Fulton Sheen is proposing to the world, basically, that we need to bring God into our conversations regarding politics and economics. It's when we try to do these things without God, we suffer a great consequence. And of course, Fulton Sheen would warn us about the isms that are out there, communism, materialism, fascism. Again, there's so many isms, but they're usually void of God. And so Fulton Sheen is making that proposal once again to us to say, we've tried to live without God. We've tried this experiment, and ultimately it's failing. So let's try it again, but this time put God first, and we will receive his blessing.
We know the phrase of, a failure to understand history, kind of dooms us to continuing failure as well. So it is interesting that you would put forth this. Are there some issues, similarities that were happening at the time, and that what Fulton J. Sheen wrote about at the time, that you can see a direct correlation to issues of today?
Right. Well, I think he starts off, again, in the first chapter of the book, he talks about the revolutionary tempo, and he mentions that these revolutions are usually, again, very irrational, they're violent, and they're atheistic. And I think this is what we're seeing in society today. A lot of irrational thought, a great deal of violence, and atheism is on the rise. And he would remind us that this atheism is not so much not believing in God. It's an attack on God. It's an attack on his representatives. It's an attack on all that is holy. And he gives many examples in the book of those attacks. And so I think this is what we have to realize, is that the revolution is still on, and it's happening all over the world. But we have to always remember that it's very atheistic in nature. And again, it's this battle between heaven and earth, between choosing God and choosing man. So I think it's very relevant to just have this lesson presented to us once again. And that's what Fulton Sheen is doing.
As you continue to work on his cause and bring out his message again and again, any new books that you're working on currently that'll be coming out?
Yes, we've just releasing in a few weeks a book called War and Peace, an anthology. I took 5 of Fulton Sheen's books that he wrote during the Second World War. A beautiful book for God and Country, God and War, The Divine Verdict, The Philosophies at War, and The 7 Pillars of Peace. These are 5 timely books to be re-released, and so we've put it into an anthology and entitled it War and Peace. And, I think it's just very providential that Fulton Sheen's name, in the Gaelic language, when you translate it, Fulton in Gaelic means war, and Sheen in Gaelic means peace. And so
Wow.
his name is actually War and Peace. And so, and of course, he wrote so well on that topic of war and peace. And he provides us with some solutions. And so I think this is what we're coming out with in the next few weeks. Again, a beautiful anthology called War and Peace.
Well, thank you so much, Al Smith, for being with us today. For more on all of these works on Fulton J. Sheen, we can go to sophiainstitute.com. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Father. God love you.